Peyusha
Shatramuram Peyusha
Suchya Durvachobanai Navinne Sharite Hridi
Ladies.
Atami Miminitasya Shatramuram Peyusha
Ataapi, therefore, me, my, Avinitasya, not very submissive, Kshatram, the spirit of a Kshatriya, Gauram, intolerant, Peyusha, achieved, Shuruchya, of Queen Shuruchi, Durvacha, harsh words, Bane, by the arrows, Na, not, Bine, being pierced, Shrayate, remain in, Hriday, the heart. My dear Lord, I'm very impudent for not accepting your instructions, but this is not my fault. It's due to my having been born in a Kshatriya family. My stepmother, Shuruchi, has pierced my heart with her harsh words. Therefore, your valuable instructions does not stand in my heart. Please repeat. My dear Lord, I'm very impudent for not accepting your instructions. But this is not my fault. It is due to my having been born in a Kshatriya family. My stepmother Suruchi has pierced my heart with her harsh words. Therefore, your valuable instruction does not stand in my heart. Okay, here's a long purport by Srila Prabhupada. Let me take this on. That's really too small for a garland. It's good, maybe good for a crown, but not a garland. It is said that the heart or mind is just like an earthen pot. Once broken, it cannot be repaired by any means. Dhruva Maharaj gave this example to Narada Muni. He said that his heart, having been pierced by the arrows of his stepmother's harsh words, felt so broken that nothing seemed valuable but his desire to counteract her insult. His stepmother had said that because he was born from the womb of Shuniti, a neglected queen of Maharaj Uttanapad, Dhruva Maharaj was not fit to sit either on the throne or on his father's lap. In other words, according to his stepmother, he could not be declared king. Dhruva Maharaj's determination, therefore, was to become king of a planet exalted even beyond that possessed by Lord Brahma, the greatest of all the demigods. Dhruva Maharaj indirectly informed the great sage Narad that there are 4 kinds of human spirit: the Brahminical spirit, the Kshatriya spirit, Vaishya spirit, and the Shudra spirit. The spirit of one caste is not applicable to the members of another. The philosophical spirit enunciated by Narada might have been suitable for a Brahmin spirit, but it was not suitable for a Kshatriya. Dhruva frankly admitted that he was lacking in Brahminical humility and was therefore unable to accept the philosophy of Narada Muni. The statements of Dhruva Maharaj indicate that unless a child is trained according to his tendency, there is no possibility of his developing his particular spirit. It was the duty of the spiritual master to observe the psychological movement of a particular boy and thus train him in a particular occupational duty. Dhruva Maharaj, having already been trained in the Kshatriya spirit, would not accept the Brahminical philosophy. In America, we have practical experience of this incompatibility of Brahminical and Kshatriya temperaments. The American boys who have simply been trained as Shudras are not at all fit to fight in battle. Therefore, when they are called to join the military, they refuse because they do not have a Kshatriya spirit. This is a cause of great dissatisfaction in society. That the boys do not have a Kshatriya spirit does not mean that they are trained in Brahminical qualities. They are trained as Shudras, and thus in frustration they are becoming hippies. However, as soon as they enter the Krishna conscious movement being started in America, they are trained to meet the Brahminical qualifications, even though they have fallen to the lowest condition of Shudras. In other words, since the Krishna consciousness movement is open for everyone, people in general can attain the Brahminical qualifications. This is the greatest need at the present moment. For now, there are actually no Brahmins or Kshatriyas, but only some Vaishyas, and for the most part, Shudras. The classification of society into Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras is very scientific. In the human social body, the Brahmins are considered the head, Kshatriyas are the arms, the Vaishyas the belly, and the Shudras are the legs. At the present moment, the body has legs and a belly, but there are no arms or head, and therefore society is topsy-turvy. It is necessary to re-establish the Brahminical qualifications in order to raise the fallen human society to the highest standard of spiritual consciousness. Hare Krishna. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnana Salakaya Chakshurvilitam Dina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasa Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Rama. Could you go just a little further back? No, not just the translation, because I hear too much of it, and that means the ladies must hear too much of it. Thank you. Okay, here, Dhruva Maharaj, my dear Lord, I am very impudent for not accepting your instructions, but this is not my fault. It is due to my having been born in a Kshatriya family. My stepmother should has pierced my heart with her harsh words. Therefore, your valuable instruction does not stand in my heart. Well, obviously from the purport, it's quite clear that Srila Prabhupada was very much interested in establishing Varnashram, and although often devotees cite the history that Prabhupada was more inclined to this in the mid-70s, but here this is early 70s, 1970 or so. So Srila Prabhupada was observing something which many of you don't necessarily since then they've been losing wars. But there's the young men, there was a long war, and young men were forced into draft. But they became what's called draft dodgers. In other words, they wanted to escape the draft. And so there were two ways of doing that. One was joining the Hare Krishna movement, and the other one was going to Canada, where they just cross the border. It's the biggest unguarded border in the world, and or at least unpatrolled. It goes on for thousands of miles. And Srila Prabhupada is referring to that, and there was a very, when Prabhupada came, and that was in 1966 when Srila Prabhupada started to actively preach. This was like a really hot topic, and it shows Srila Prabhupada's lack of inclination to be politically correct, whereas all the young people were all against, especially here, who he refers to, the hippies, the spiritualists, those who are taking drugs and so many other things. They were all against the war. Prabhupada he was supportive that there was a war. He wasn't pro or con, but he was supportive, and he thought that certainly America had the right to defend its interests. And then here he clearly says that, well, they're not trained as Kshatriyas, so what do you expect? That because the young people aren't trained to fight, therefore they just run away. They run away before there's even a battle, before they even see battle. And then you see a lot of those who do go, who aren't really long-term, or maybe some are professional soldiers. The trauma of war is such that they just become emotionally, mentally unstable. They can't reintegrate into society anymore. So once again, even those who went to fight, they're also not necessarily Kshatriyas, because we have many references in the Bhagavatam about Kshatriyas who they enjoy fighting, just like Brahmins enjoy what they're doing. Ultimately, if it's your dharma, you like it. So, same thing with Vaishyas enjoy making money, and Shudras enjoy serving others, and Brahmins enjoy teaching. So Kshatriyas enjoy fighting, otherwise what does it mean to be a Kshatriya? But instead they become traumatized, so you don't become traumatized by something you like to do. And we don't read that. For instance, in the Mahabharata, people got traumatized. And they needed psychiatrists or other things afterwards. And they're not all like that. There are those who are really career military, and those are more inclined to be the real Kshatriyas. But here Srila Prabhupada, and you have Varnashram classes regularly, and there's a panchayat underway and process, and so many things. So we'll get back into the issues of Varnashram, but it's very clear. Srila Prabhupada is talking about it. This is the greatest need at present moment. For now there are no Brahmins or Kshatriyas. So what is the greatest need? People in general can attain Brahminical qualification. To actually acquire Brahminical qualification, and that discussion's been there. getting Brahminical qualification doesn't necessarily make you a Brahmana, but out of those who do, there will be some who will really be Brahmins. And this type of training we should expect may take generations, just because even though training is a very powerful thing, but without samskars, it's very difficult. So you may experience that, even though you may want to do something, but because the nature is not there. So here he says that this is Shatram, spirit, okay. The bhava, the nature of a person should be such that if you have a nature, then you can educate somebody. Just like if someone likes to study, then you can teach them. So teaching is one part, having the inclination is the other. If someone doesn't like to study, you can teach them, and maybe something gets in their head. But ultimately, their only business is to try and somehow or another get through an examination. Otherwise, they have no real interest. And that samskars is regaining that samskar may take time. So if you train Brahmins, Kshatriyas, etc. to become Shudras, and they start acting as Shudras, then that action and their psychology and that mentality comes across to the next generation, who becomes more inclined towards those lower natures, and so in this way the whole real qualities of the varnas, and for that matter the ashramas, becomes diluted and lost. So people grihasthas should become vanaprasthas and sannyasis. It's not easy. It's rare. It's rare we see that. Srila Prabhupada gave sannyas to many devotees, or to devotees, and then only a certain percentage of them were able to follow the principles of sannyas because they lacked the qualification. So it was very difficult, even though they were inclined to that, and Prabhupada gave the teaching, but the substance wasn't there. So samskara is also, samskarat bhavet vijja. So samskaras also play an important role. What is the substance with which we are working? And that is Srila Prabhupada's idea of Gurukula and actually having Krishna conscious children, that in a matter of a few generations, then you can really have substantial varnashram, which you can say is sort of comprehensive for those generation of devotees who come in from the outside world. You can say educated varnashram, people who are educated, but it's still sort of unstable. It's stable when actually the inclination is also there. Then you can, when someone has a Kshatriya spirit, then you train them as a Kshatriya. Someone has a Brahman spirit, then you train them as a Brahman. Then it becomes easy. Then education and samskar together. Otherwise, samskar without education, that also becomes problematic. Someone's a Kshatriya, but they're not trained, and then you got the whole history of demons and so many other things they are Kshatriyas by nature, but because they're not trained in how to actually use and for whom to use their Kshatriya spirit, then they really usurp their role. And this Kshatriya spirit is very strong. So Here is Narada Muni comes to Dhruva Maharaj, he tells him something, Dhruva Maharaj says, sorry, I can't do it, go away. Either you help me or let me move on. So, and of course, he raises a irrelevant point, which is not a right point. Well, it's not my fault, it's just my nature. But you are responsible for your nature. You're not a Kshatriya by accident. It wasn't your parents who made you a Kshatriya. They were simply vehicles for realizing your karma. So, yes, you are nature. But very interesting how strong this Kshatriya spirit is. And here's one of the symptoms. Unfortunately, there's no Bhagavad Gita here, so I can't, and the second time I wanted to refer to Bhagavad Gita. So, Tejal Vriti, Krishna says, heroism, and Kshatriyas are very proud. And once you offend them, I've had experience of, for instance, devotees who are from the Punjab, and Punjabis are more or less Kshatriyas. And you offend them once, they never forget it. They may forgive you, but they'll never forget it. It's there for life. It's sort of a different spirit. And they may not forgive you either. That's the other aspect. Brahmins are different. Brahmins forgive and they may forget, because if you really forgive somebody, then you forget also. So, and he is 5 years old. So, 5-year-old children ordinary children don't make this kind of thing. We should know that although he's 5 years old, more or less he's behaving like he's 8 years old. So his conduct, his psychology, his physical appearance is that of an 8-year-old. Why? Because the nature of sort of special people, and after all, he's the great-grandson of Lord Brahma, so he's not an ordinary person. No, he is the grandson of Brahma. Yeah. So Swayambhuva Manu. Great-grandson. Yeah, great-grandson. Swayambhuva Uttanapada is his father, Swayambhuva Manu is his grandfather, and Brahma is his great-grandfather. So he's not an ordinary person, and ordinary people and sort of people with very high samskars, people who have very high qualification, they will think, behave, and act above their age. This is when they're young. Krishna is also like that. That's why we say that he's 16 years old, eternally 16 years old. But Shukadeva Goswami says that he was 11 years old when he left Vrindavan to go to Mathura. And that's it. Navayovanam Cha. Krishna's there. He's a Kishore, eternal Kishore, just on the stage of being Yovana, a youth. So Navat Yovanam Cha, but Yovana means entering into the 16th year. So, but how can he be 11 and 16? Because he's 11 years old, but his appearance, his psychology, and his conduct and everything is that of a 16-year-old. And that's a Vedic 16-year-old, which may be equivalent to a lot more than our current conduct. So he's almost like an 8-year-old, but he says, Avinitasya. Vinita means someone who's very humble, submissive, and so on. And avinita is just the opposite. Now I'm impeded. You read yesterday what was his conduct. Well, Narada Muni is telling him that you should forgive, you should go back, don't get into all of these things. Be a little more broad-minded and accommodating, forgiving. He said, I'm sorry, I can't do that. And in the next verse, he'll explain, well, what is it that he wants? Well, this is what I want. So this nature, this Kshatriya nature, is very, very strong. And not just for Kshatriyas, but others also. There is mention in the Bhagavatam of this thing that when one hears very harsh words, then they pierce the heart and they cause sort of permanent damage. And you may have experience of that. Sometimes you hear things, or someone says something, especially someone who is near or dear, who has some authority, and something that's has a very polarizing effect. One may think that it's very unjust, and then that's something that's very hard to. What does it mean that it pierces the heart with harsh words? It means that you can't put it back together again. Prabhupada says, the heart or the mind is like an earthen pot. Once broken, it cannot be repaired by any means. So, very interesting. So you take an earthen pot, you break it. I mean, you can try to glue it back together again, but it's never the same. It's not as useful, and it certainly doesn't look the same. So for that reason, people are advised, Krishna advises that austerity of the tongue is to always speak very favorably. Speak very, very nicely to others. And that's something that is seen throughout the Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita. The Vedic culture we talk about is really a culture of respect. And if we also go back to the whole concept of Varnashram, Varnashram is also a culture of respect. One of the objections to the establishment of Varnashram is that Prabhupada here says everyone's trained as a Shudra. No one wants to hear, okay, but are you going to categorize me as a Shudra? That's not something that people are readily open to. Why? Because they think, well, Shudra is something that you don't respect. But no, this is not one of not respect. Whatever someone does, they all deserve respect according to the service that they do, according to their dedication and their determination. No question of not respecting. But where there's a lack of respect, then people start thinking materially. So offering respect to others is very important. actually the 11th canto, his teachings to Uddhava, where he, on his teachings in devotional service, he says the essence of devotional service is to see me in all things and everywhere. And until one sees Krishna, this is a theme that's repeated throughout the Bhagavatam dozens of times by many different authorities, Brahma, Prahlad Maharaj, so many others, that ultimately this concept of duality, meaning that you see that anything is different than Krishna, everything is Krishna, in terms of everything being Krishna's energy. So nothing is separate from him, and both our bodies, even our souls, Krishna explains, Aham Atma Gaurukesha. He says, I am actually within the heart of every living entity. He's even within the soul. So Krishna's inside everything, outside everything, and that's why Krishna says one should offer respect, because you're offering respect to Krishna. And he says, until you learn how to develop this vision, then, he says, with your words, with your body, one should offer respect to all things, to all living entities, and so on. So it's a very interesting sadhana that Krishna is offering. And more or less, this is what he says. Of course, he also says that one should chant Hare Krishna, and one should do so many other things. But he summarizes the whole thing that if you don't know how to give respect to others, then forget it, it won't work. For instance, what happens to you chanting Hare Krishna? Well, you commit offenses. You commit Vaishnava Aparadha. You commit offenses to the deities. You do so many other things. So, why? Because I'm not respectful. So, learning how to be respectful. Okay, Narada Muni, he's a kid. He's a child. So, he gets forgiven. He's just at the age. Now don't see him as an 8-year-old, see him as a 5-year-old. Okay, up until this stage, there's no reaction for the things that he says or does. There may be karmic reaction. It isn't that he sticks his hand in the fire and the fire thinks, oh, he's only 4 years old, so I won't burn him. So he gets burned. But in terms of accruing things as something as being a sin or an offense, that generally is not considered very serious. So Narada Muni doesn't take it very seriously. Besides, he's a Brahmin. So he says, Bruhi Asmat Pitri Brahman. Oops, sorry, that's the wrong verse. So he says, well, you're a Brahmin. That's a different thing. But I'm a Kshatriya, and I have a different. So this method of speaking nicely, this harsh speech is extraordinarily prevalent in the world that we live in. Social media means a media for harsh speech. That's all it's about. And it's about all kinds of other crazy things. But it's a device invented by demons to destroy whatever is left of any good sense of human beings in society. And it is. It's a demoniac instrument, and it's meant by demons, whether the actual inventors that we see are the demons themselves, or there's something else behind that, but judge the thing by its result. And all it's about, or 99% of all it's about, is in one way or another, everyone is attacking everybody else for whatever they think is right. And there's freedom of speech. This whole concept of freedom of speech is in itself crazy. Unlimited freedom of speech. We see that even a dog, in Ramayana, there's the example of a dog coming into the court of the king and complaining. So they have freedom of speech, but there's a way in which they're meant to complain. And you can't just complain any old way. So everyone had the right. We see, for instance, that the Brahmin came in front of Maharaj Ugrasen and said, "You must not be governing properly because my son died before me." Not only one, but so many. So, but you don't attack the king. You speak in a certain way that's always respectful, constructive, productive, and inspiring. And one is free to speak the truth. You can't speak freely falsehoods. So freedom of speech means you have educated people who know what the truth is, and they're free to speak the truth. You're not free to speak any kind of nonsense. That just bullets. That's called prajalpa. So anyway, that's one thing that we can take away here, aside from the emphasis Srila Prabhupada makes on varnashram, training our devotees as brahmanas or with municipal qualification. And that is this concept of how we can actually really establish this real culture of chivalry and being very respectful. There used to be, sometimes you see in olden days, this thing where this lady wants to step across a pond and the gentleman takes his coat and he puts his coat down for her to walk across. That was being, although it may have been mundane, but it was a concept of being chivalrous, of being very polite, of being very considerate of others' needs. But it requires training, and that training really needs to be there. Particularly needs to be there since children, and they need to be taught at an early age how to actually show respect. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Shri Ram Swami Maharaj ki jai.